Hey everyone, Gary Edelman, American Battlefield Trust. It is Gettysburg 163, and I think some of y'all know right now, and whenever you're watching this, might have heard that it was rather hot in Gettysburg. Probably because of that, we lost the feed in the middle of one of our lives. We were at Meade's headquarters, and we were going to walk through this lovely place, Evergreen Cemetery, on our way toward the Baltimore Pike, with the permission of our good friend Brian Cannell, who's the superintendent of the cemetery. So thanks to Brian for allowing us to shoot here. This video is to sort of pick up in the footsteps of the live video, because the phone is still too hot to go live. So we're using other equipment, and here we are going to talk about Evergreen Cemetery a little bit. Now, it is associated with so much, with Gettysburg history, with modern Gettysburg history. The National Cemetery is right on the other side of the wrought iron fence right over there. So we're right here on Cemetery Hill for real. Now, on July 2nd, 1863, and right on the other side of the road over there, you might be able to catch portions of East Cemetery Hill. That's where on July 2nd, 1863, Confederates came and attacked and really threatened the Union line. And that's why if we take a few more steps here, we got Palmer Hiddesdorf behind the camera there. I'm about to bring on our good friend Wayne Motz here. This is why, and we'll pause right around here. No, I just blocked the gatehouse, so let's go a little bit further. I'm going to stop right around here and show this drawing. Wayne Motz, National Civil War Museum. Come on, what are we seeing here?
Well, this is the actual gatehouse, as you can see, and this would be the Second Corps reinforcements that we talked about. It'd be the Second Corps. Oh, he's pulling me over here, everybody. You know, I need direction because I'm not very good at this. But over here, you'll see the Second Corps reinforcements coming up to relieve Cemetery Hill when it comes under attack, Gary, for July 2nd, 1863. And the gatehouse that's in the background, they just ended up restoring it. They beautifully painted it, and it's probably not exactly the color, but it's real close to what the color would have been during the time of the battle.
In fact, I have something to say about that. Surprise, surprise.
Okay.
You know, so not only, by the way, do we see the 90-foot poplar tree that you can see from Lee's headquarters, you can see from all around, but also in addition, this is a drawing or a work of art based on a crude drawing made by, I can't remember if it's Alfred Watt or Edwin Forbes, but in that crude drawing, they point to the thing, and he points to the thing with a line and says dark brown. So he's at least saying that it's not like brick color. It's obviously painted. And like Wayne said, probably close, and they did find some paint samples for that. So Wayne, why don't we pick up as we walk here with a little bit more about the fight on East Cemetery Hill. Then we'll talk a little bit more about the cemetery and maybe this statue we see up here.
So, Gary, before we were so abruptly cut off, now I like to think that you and I were on fire. This content's on fire. So we're sorry that the heat did it, but it was
might
good.
Happen again then,
it was good content. And you mentioned that Rhodes's division was supposed to come up and attack at West Cemetery Hill at the same time, right across the street where the viewers are right now, Jubal Early's division, 2 brigades under Hayes, the Louisiana Tigers, and you also have Isaac Avery, North Carolinians, are going to attack this on July 2nd, 1863, and they're going to come right up to the very top of this hill where you see the statue of General Hancock right there in front of you.
Yeah,
Gary.
good. Well done. Perfect timing, by the way. What a beautiful scene we're seeing here. I hope y'all are taking that in. I saw Palmer just shooting that. So we're at the cemetery. Now, the cemeteries back then have superintendents, okay? And Elizabeth Thorne is actually sort of left alone with her father to deal with it. What's up with Mr. Thorne? Do you remember?
So he's in the military. He's in military service, and she is living here in a portion, one section of the gatehouse. And on the other side, she's a masser, I think is how you say her maiden name. Her parents, who are German immigrants, are on the other side. And so she is working as the de facto superintendent. Really, she is the superintendent during the time of the battle.
Good. And then she is left with all these dead around here. And all of her clothing was used as bandages, as I remember. And she has to live in the same dress for something like 6 weeks. Her and her dad dig dozens of graves, and these aren't 2 feet deep either. These are the real deal. It's July, but you've got to deal with this health risk around Gettysburg. People feel like you've got to get things in the ground or burned, or else you're going to have some problems in Gettysburg. So the story of Elizabeth Thorne has really sort of resonated. And imagine living in the same dress. I don't even like to wear the same shirt 2 days in a row, let alone in July, let alone doing work like that in the dirt, and that's your only dress. There's so many good things about Elizabeth Thorne, and you can learn a lot about her online with other videos.
Yeah, and Gary, we should say her and her father, they're burying about 100 soldiers up here, and the other part of this story is she's about, if I remember correctly, what, 6 months pregnant at the time of the Battle of Gettysburg. So not only is she doing all this work in the heat, she's pregnant as well on top of that.
Good. And let me just say too, on top of that, you know, nowadays when you approach 7 months, they're like, don't get on a plane. I mean, I don't think this would have been advised, but this is a different time and different advice of the doctor. This needed to be done, and she's going to do it.
And she has a little girl, and she names the girl, I think it's Rose or Rosa Meade Thorne, and this girl does not live to be an adult. She dies at a younger age. It makes you wonder whether all of these things, you know, the stress of doing everything, we can't ever say for certain, but this young child doesn't survive really to adulthood.
And I'm going to recommend, come on Palmer, let's check this out. I'm going to recommend you might want to check out, if you get a chance, a video or a program by Tim Smith called Battle Babies, and it's about all the babies who were born in the wake of the Battle of Gettysburg to women who were pregnant during it, and a lot of them do bear the names of those heroes of Gettysburg. You know, the Pennsylvanians were really happy that the North won, and they were willing to memorialize them for all time. Now, I know we're along a busy road. Palmer's showing us our cool sign, and after that, if he focuses on the front of the gatehouse, you get to see this famous view, the most photographed structure by the most number of photographers in the post-battle era. Right within a month of Gettysburg, you've got the Tysons, you've got Weaver, you've got Gardner and Brady and Charles Himes all photographing this particular structure here. Now, as Palmer gets across and hopefully doesn't hit that curve that's right behind him here, he's going up here. I'm going to ask him to pan to the right, okay? Two things to the right, and this is going to turn into a East Cemetery Hill tour if we're not careful, but you see those things surrounding the cannons? Those are called lunettes, demi-lune, half-moon shaped things that were much taller, and they were reinforced with you know, wood and fence rails, and they could protect the cannons and the cannoneers there, okay? It's because of those features that the superintendent of the cemetery, or the man running it, David McConaughey, said we should preserve these natural features east of Cemetery Hill. He named East Cemetery Hill, and the first land he preserved is right beyond these trees right here, those 4 acres over there. The Gettysburg National Military Park sprouted from that acreage there, and because of him, more of East Cemetery Hill, Culp's Hill, Little Round Top, and then the rest of the battlefield.
Yeah, and Gary, we should tell all the listeners and viewers, just like July 1st, when this was the main traffic for the Union Army, we got a lot of traffic on the Baltimore Pike, everybody.
I would suggest that more than 30,000 soldiers of the Union Army came up on this, the best road leading into Gettysburg from any direction, the white crushed limestone Baltimore Turnpike. It's a toll road, it's the best road, it's the lifeline of the Union Army. It is how they get their reinforcements up, their ammunitions up, to get their wounded away, and you need a good road, and the Confederates control 8 of 10 of Gettysburg roads by July 2nd.
So Palmer's facing south for the listeners and viewers. We're walking south on the Baltimore Pike, just on the East Cemetery hillside of Baltimore Pike, Gary, right where the artillery units are for July 2nd, 1863, and elements of the Union 11th Army Corps sent over here. And then you've got a great view of Stevens Knoll and Culp's Hill from here as well.
So imagine on July 1st, 1863, Winfield Scott Hancock and Olive Otis Howard, both Union Corps commanders, sort of splitting up the responsibility, if you believe some of the accounts, to say, okay, Hancock, you kind of covered Culp's Hill, I got Cemetery Hill, let's get these reinforcements in place and let us defend this place, and that's going to help set up the fish hook at Gettysburg. Of course, there's going to be intense fighting overlapping with at the same time of the fight on East Cemetery Hill at twilight on July 2nd, with the night fight on Culp's Hill over there. And you know, we don't have an ambitious walk here. We're only going to go beyond the house in front of us. That is the McKnight House, owned by the American Battlefield Trust and preserved because of you, the members and supporters of the American Battlefield Trust, who allowed us to not only preserve that property, but a property beyond it, another property beyond it, and of course a property sort of to the left of it, which used to be known as the War Museum, and that's what we're headed for now, so we can show you some of our handiwork. But first, Wayne, what do you want to say about Stevens Knoll, or Greenleaf T. Stevens, or the guy in charge, I think it's Whittier, after that? Anything to add, Wayne?
So there's a main battery that's sent up there, and after the retreat of the Union Army on July 1st, remember there's a little disagreement between O. Howard of the Union 11th Corps and then Winfield Scott Hancock of the 2nd Corps when he arrives on the battlefield. Meade has basically empowered him to take command here. Howard it doesn't like this, nor is he in favor of it, and even after the war he doesn't really agree. He says that Hancock did certain things and he did certain things, but Hancock is in overall command here. And there's a great story about moving over toward where the Stevens Knoll is. He asked an artillery battery to be placed over there, and of course the person who's in charge of that artillery unit didn't know who he was, and he told him to get over there because it was General Hancock. of course, and of course he didn't say it in the polite way I'm saying it.
Indeed. Indeed, I think that's right. So we've been looking down the Baltimore Pike, which is, out toward the town of, sort of like Westminster, Littlestown, things like that, right? If I have that right.
Right.
But if we go off this way, Palmer, let's look back toward the crest of Cemetery Hill. West Cemetery Hill behind Wayne, East Cemetery Hill to your front right over here, and you get an idea why this is the desirable position at Gettysburg, okay? And what's interesting is that although we're here basically almost at the War Museum, we are on Cemetery Hill. The foot is pretty far behind us, beyond the War Museum area.
Yeah.
So, Cemetery Hill is sprawling. It goes over toward the field of Pickett's Charge. It's all the way over here on East Cemetery Hill. These are the heights south of town, along with Culp's Hill that so many soldiers wrote about.
And for the viewers and listeners, right over Gary's left shoulder, right over it, if you want to pan over that shoulder, that's going to be the attacking place for the North Carolinians of Isaac Avery's brigade. And then beyond it, right over the top of the crest of the hill, or over where you see the trees, beyond that would be the Louisianans. And boy, they've got a tough road to slog up there, Gary.
I'm glad you brought that up. Now, one thing that's going to make it easier and help their success is the Louisianians are coming from beyond that light blue water tower behind Winfield Scott Hancock. Now, the Union line, the Ohio, the 107th Ohio, the 25th and 75th Ohio, they're not positioned right at that tree line. They're in fact positioned on the other side of the tower, but the Park Service doesn't own it. That's why in 2012 and 13, the Trust bought those woods and bought the land beyond it. So now we own both sides of that line where the Louisianians attack and where the Ohio men, who after the first day, some of them are 6 feet apart. They're like in skirmish line, and that's going to help the Hayes's Tigers, Louisiana Tigers, sort of make punches, holes through. It's interesting that men from North Carolina and Louisiana take the crest while Union soldiers are still back down on the hill holding firm. So certain units broke, other units did not break. So it's a fascinating fight.
Everybody, this is the 1st Division of the 11th Corps, Francis Barlow. These poor guys got shot up on day 1, and they're right back here, Gary, for the evening of July 2nd.
They were already the smallest division in the Union Army. I think that it's better to walk around this way here, Palmer. Now, one thing I want to talk about before we get in to show you, actually we can walk around this way, is that right down the road over there, and I'll point out to the very woods there was somebody who lived there named the Pfeffer family, P-F-E-F-F-E-R. It looks like Pfeffer, but it's really Peffer. They're still around here to this day. And it is in the Pfeffer farm that we know that George Gordon Meade made his headquarters after the Leicester farm. Now, there are some talk that he might have gone somewhere else in between, so we know that it was a temporary headquarters, but we're confident it was his headquarters. I don't think people really dispute that. And let's stop right about here. It's pretty interesting. We can still see the foundation to it, and that land has also been preserved by the members and supporters of the American Battlefield Trust.
Almost every place we walk today, the Trust has got some hand in part of it, which is a great thing.
It's not coincidence. The people who work at the Trust are selecting the route, so maybe not surprising. Now, Palmer, you can see a white Cape Cod house there, and that's about all you can see, but you might be able to see Stevens Knoll rising before it. Well, 6 months ago, it looked like this. Okay, I see the white Cape Cod house. It looks like I'm pointing to it from right about this location here. You can see that War Museum really took up all that ground behind it, blocking Stevens Knoll. And we have opened up a view because of you. This was not cheap to preserve. It was not cheap to restore. And we've still got more work to do, as you can see. But that is where the War Museum was. And now we can see Greenleaf T. Stevens battery marker up there. When the trees are down, we can see Henry Warner Slocum's monument up there as well. So, and eventually the people who were kind enough to sell this to us, they don't have to sell to us, we can't force anybody, have a holdover, so we will take that house down when we get the chance to. We will also, of course, shrink this parking lot, and you will be able to visit. There will be a trail here and whatnot, but more on that a little bit later. We hope that, when we come back next year, we might be doing some of this work already, even if not all of it. So, Wayne, this is the main thing we were going to do when our feed cut out. I'm told that our feed cut out right when I said, I don't feel sympathy for tall people, and then it cut out right around then, but we were going to make it over to here, so this is what I wanted to do. Do you have anything to add?
No, I just want to say thanks a lot for having me out on this. What a wonderful walk, and hopefully the listeners and viewers can replicate this. They're welcome to do, except for the section in Evergreen Cemetery.
Yeah,
you should not do that.
You certainly can't film in there without permission, and you know, unless you really have a family member buried there, you should really get permission.
But the other parts that we've walked here, you're pretty much open for people to come and look at, and especially that view down by the rec park looking up to Fairview Avenue. It's tremendous.
Just don't go in anybody's house in the rec park, you know, in Cold Park or anything.
Yeah, stay on the public sidewalks for making that.
I think we'll wrap it up there as I show this picture one more time. You know, thanks to Palmer for all this shooting on a hot day. Thanks, Wayne. National Civil War Museum, one of my best and oldest Civil War friends here. And to y'all for watching and supporting battlefield education, and as you see here, preservation and restoration.
Hello, this is Trace Atkins. Get inspired at battlefields.org.